Okay, so we've got all of our components now. They've all arrived. I'd like to say, before we go any further, before anyone thinks that Ben is probably the most spoilt teenager in the world, he does actually have a job, and he is paid for the majority of this. This here, I think we've got everything. Obviously, the case. I'm going to talk as if you have absolutely no previous knowledge of computers whatsoever. There's obviously the box that we're going to put everything in. This is the motherboard that he's chosen. It's actually quite heavy. Now, the price of cases varies greatly. This one is a particularly cheap one. It's actually a mid-tower. You can get a mini tower, which is smaller than that, or a full tower. The other PC that we built, we used a full tower, but for some reason I couldn't find anything appropriate on the internet. So I got this one, which is, it's a fairly decent size. I always like to have as big a case as possible because technology moves on. The size of motherboards changes, the size of graphics cards. Some graphics cards are really, really big. So this is a motherboard. This is basically a circuit board that everything will attach to. Right, so we have quite a nice large table here to work on. It's really important to have space and light so you can really see what you're doing, especially if you wear glasses like me. Every computer has a motherboard. A motherboard is a large circuit board. Everything has to connect to that. That's really, if you think of it as broadband, you can't go on the internet without an internet connection. This is connecting information to all of the different components. Components are pieces of a computer. Now on the motherboard, this will be mounted first inside the case. There are little mounting holes, and it's very important when you order your motherboard that you check the specification. There are standard holes so that your holes on your motherboard will fit the holes on the case. So when you're ordering a case, check that your motherboard will not only fit in it, which of course it will, but that the hole mounts are all equal.
Essentially, a bit of an easier way to understand that is if you're on Amazon and you're looking for a motherboard, if it says ATX, then you're fine.
So back to the motherboard. Once this is mounted in there, the central processing unit will be installed. Again, there are different types of what they call CPU. It's just an acronym for Central Processing Unit. Now there's Intel is a particular road that you can go down. Me personally, I'd never go down that road. I think they're very expensive. I think you're paying for the name. There's nothing wrong with AMD, which is another alternative. And although still expensive, it is a lot cheaper. So I would go for the AMD board, AMD chip. Now Ben has chosen the Threadripper.
It's called a Ryzen Threadripper 2920X. In this particular CPU, it shows off 12 cores, 24 threads, running at, I think, a base clock of 3.6 GHz, but it can be boosted up to 4.35 GHz. So essentially, if you're someone that does a lot of content creation, Blender work, anything like that, this is kind of a must-do.
But it's quite expensive, isn't it?
If you're someone who's heavy duty, then
okay.
Not really.
If you're someone who's just looking to do basic gaming, Fortnite as an example,
Yeah.
I know that's a game you like, is it really essential to have this type of processor at this point in time? Because this is also going to become very dated very quickly. In a year's time, people will probably be watching this course thinking, and in 2 years they'll be thinking, whoa, that's old hat, and in 3 years, does people even use these things anymore? So things do move on, which is one of the reasons that I like the ability to upgrade.
Yeah. One
so
of the reasons
your one here is a different shape. If they stop doing that shape, your motherboard, which has that shape slot, will become obsolete.
Yeah. The reason I chose this is because I do a lot of streaming, content creation, things like that, recording in the background. It uses up a lot of the CPU and it causes frame drops, lag, so more cores, more threads.
How much is this guy, roughly?
I think I found it for €400.
400 euros.
Which is actually really cheap considering for how powerful it is.
How much is an Intel?
An Intel, the most recent i9 is $1,000. Only has like 8 cores in it.
Right, okay, okay. So that's our chip. Now chips get really hot. Heat is a big thing, a really, really big thing when you're running a computer. So the chips in the olden days when I used to build computers had a little fan. That was it. We just plugged it into the motherboard. These days, and this is again something that Ben has chosen, this is actually incredibly heavy, and we're going to open the box obviously later. You won't believe it that the cooler is almost as big as this box, and I'm a little bit concerned now that the case arrived last for some reason that we're not going to have quite enough clearance. This thing is going to sit also on the motherboard, so it will be like that. Ooh, we may have to start again and get a bigger case, but I'm going to run with it. Rather than doing perfect editing, mistakes happen when you're building PCs, frustrations happen. Last year we had to hotwire the PC to get it going, didn't we? Eventually, because we didn't figure out where the front panel plugged in. So
not recommended.
We're gonna see how we go, and if we end up having to rebuild it, that will become part of the course as well. Right, now you obviously need, so that's the processor will go on the motherboard and the cooler will go on the processor. These are just fans, well I say they're just fans, they are going to play an important part in keeping the PC cool inside the box, but they're RGB, so they'll make pretty colours too. Then we have the SSD. Now in my day we had hard drives which kind of look like a CD player in a car, that sort of size, quite heavy, do get hot, take up a lot of space. Technology these days, this is a solid state disk drive, 1 terabyte, which should be enough for now. This particular case can take up to 3 of these, I think, and as things move on in the future, we may well get another 2 of these who have 3 terabytes in the PC, or people may stop using terabytes and whatever the next
petabytes.
Is it petabytes? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. But we're a way off that yet, I'm sure. Yeah. Even young people can remember the humble gigabyte and megabyte and kilobyte. You know what a kilobyte is?
No.
Right, okay, so...
I know what a kilobit is. Okay, moving on, we have the Radeon RX 5700 XT. Now, this graphics card is extremely overkill for someone who is just an average gamer. This shows off quite a few display ports and 1 HDMI port. This is GDDR6, 8GB, and it's a bit powerful. If you're looking for something like just normal gaming on, say, Rainbow Six Siege, Fortnite, anything like that, I'd recommend going with something a bit lower budget, because this is coming in at a hefty price of about €350, which I'm sure you can work out the currency conversion from that, if you're in somewhere else. But normally, a graphics card for the average gamer would come to about 150 for a good one.
And also anti-static strap, which we haven't been wearing or using, but that's because most of the components are either boxed or he's only been touching the plastic. You can kill components. It's not as essential in this day and age as it was in mine, but you would just wear it on your wrist and clip that to some metal, usually on the case. And we've got anti-static paper there. And finally, he's got, that is the final one, no, not final just yet, the memory sticks.
Okay. Now right here, this is DDR4. This is 2 sticks of 16GB. Now what RAM is, essentially, is you've got memory in your PC. Say you've got a bunch of documents on your desk. You are the CPU. People keep handing you papers to do. You can't do all of those papers at once. So you say to your RAM, can you hold these papers for a second? You do what you're doing, and then they hand back once you're ready to do all that. So RAM is a very important bit of your PC. You need to have that.
How big are those sticks?
2 sticks of 16.
Right.
32GB total.
Okay, and this is the final component. This is the power supply. Now, I personally think that cheap power supplies are okay. There is a certain level of snobbery, school of thought that they have to be particular name brands. No.
It's just that there's something worth cheaping out on.
Well, what you have to do is add up how many watts each of these components that you're going to put in the box are in total. On average, gaming PC would probably be about
600 to 700 watts.
Yeah, 600 to 700 watts. The PC we built for him before, I got 1,000 watt because I was envisaging again the future, and I thought I might as well buy that now. That'll save me in the long run. This time we've got a 900 watt. And it's a fairly heavy thing, and it's going to be a top mount. It's going to go in the top of the box, the way this case is configured. And then it comes with a load of cables, and which just look like spiders' webs. These are going to be, this little beast here plugs into the mains electricity, and then it passes on that power to each and every one of the components, and we'll go through that bit by bit. Just get power lead in there. So that's the power unit. Right, well, I think that sort of covers the basics just at this, and then what we'll do for the next course, bring the case to the front and we'll have a good look inside the case.